You can expect about 3 days of load shedding this winter. That's what we're told. And it's a dramatic decrease, certainly, from the over 30 days prediction earlier this year. Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter says with the easing of lockdown regulations, the utility expects an increase in demand and says they're working on plans to meet that demand. The company has stressed that given the unpredictability and unreliability of the system, the risk of load shedding will remain till August next year. We're now joined by the Group Executive for Generation, that's Bheki Nxumalo. He's with the utility. Mr. Nxumalo, thanks very much for your time. Welcome to the AM report. Perhaps we should start with that prediction. About 3 days, it almost sounds good to be true for many South Africans who've now acclimatized to load shedding in some respects. But we're also told it's a prediction. What level of confidence, then, do you have in the prediction that you've made?
Thank you very much, Ayanda, for having me, and good morning to listeners. I think, firstly, let me start by saying, since we have started with the lockdown, it has given us opportunity to do some short-term maintenance, which has allowed us to improve our system availability. So, yes, you are right. Given where we are now for this winter period, if we look at the forecast that we need to meet, we are seeing at the 80% confidence level for probability that we will be able to meet. We will have only 3 days of load shedding coming down from the 31 days that we had prior to the lockdown. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Nxumalo, so in about just over 2 months' time, it'll be a year exactly since the appointment of a chief restructuring officer at the power utility. Many people have called this a waste of time, just a paper exercise. Can you give us an idea of how much has been done to unbundle Eskom into those 3 entities, Generation being one of them?
Thank you very much. I think the process has moved. I'm sure you would have heard yesterday our Group CEO talking about the initial process, which is functional unbundling, has started. Divisional boards have been appointed for the 3 entities, which is generation, transmission, and distribution. And I am now appointed as an MP for the generation division. So the process is ongoing, in line with what the Department of Public Enterprise has stipulated in terms of the Eskom framework. So it is ongoing. I think the progress has been made. The boards have set already for all the 3 divisions. Yeah, we are moving forward on that space. Thank you very much.
And, we are also receiving a lot of feedback on our Twitter page as we have this conversation. In fact, one of our viewers pointing out that a lot of difficulties have to do with the vandalism of Eskom infrastructure in many communities. The utility has responded to that in some respects by introducing, I think, rationed type of load shedding during peak hours in densely populated areas. There's going to be a need for a whole lot more of a sustainable solution to this. Can you speak to us about what thinking is going into that, if any at all?
Yes, and there is a lot of thinking that is going into that space. Firstly, I must say it is quite regrettable that while we have been honest and South Africans who are using the electricity commodity in a responsible manner, we unfortunately have those who don't have illegal connection. So our colleagues in the division are consistently and continuously engaging with the communities where we operate. Firstly, the issue of education, because it's not only about using electricity illegally, it's also unsafe. You might end up with killing people, but also to fulfill this thing, you overload the network and result into some transformer failing, and then you affect a whole lot of people. So the education is ongoing, and also the engagement with the communities in South Africa. There's a lot of engagement that are happening to try and see how can we solve this problem, because it's actually beyond the Eskom. It's a broader societal issue that we need a lot of stakeholders to come together to see that apart from vandalizing the network, we must ensure that it is used safely as well to save lives. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, do we have timelines about when you're hoping to have a handle of the situation? I understand the difficulties you've pointed out, but I'm sure you can understand the frustration of many communities who are on the receiving end of these inefficiencies.
Yeah, it is quite an unfortunate situation that you end up now with some, like I was saying, that some honest and people who are using electricity correctly. But yeah, I think it's something that the communities in specific areas also need to partner with us to see how best we can deal with this problem, also working with the police and report all these crime incidents. Because I'm sure that sometimes people will see some of these connections that are happening illegally. And like I said, then that creates a bit of a safety risk for the network itself and also for the people that are using that commodity. It is not something that can be solved quickly or by one individual, but we cannot give up. We need to continuously engage our communities and educate about the dangers of electricity and also how we can use it sparingly so that everyone can help it.
There's also been a lot of talk around IPPs, Mr. Nxumalo. It's been an issue that's been contentious for quite some time. Yesterday we heard from the CEO of Eskom that there's, I guess, a will to relook at the conversation. In fact, conversations might be happening already in an effort to try and ensure that the consumer has less of a cost, essentially, in this entire value chain. Can you give us a sense of the nature of these conversations and how much of the generation burden Eskom is actually willing to give to IPPs?
On that front, you will recall that the IPP are actually formed and managed via the Department of by DMRE. So as Eskom, so those discussions will be led from that front, and then Eskom will obviously contribute to those discussions because we are an interested party into that space. But so in terms of the details of that, I think I would rather leave that one to the concerned department. But from a generation perspective, the IPPs obviously they are part of the generation. They are part of assisting us as well to deal with the supply, to meet the supply demand on the country. But in terms of the negotiations and all of those things, we will also follow the lead from the DMRE, who are the owners of this IPP.
We've also seen many calls from organizations raising alarms around our use of coal as a primary fuel. In many instances, we know that coal, of course, is not a renewable resource. Eventually, it's going to run out. What are the conversations around moving to renewable energy, and how much time do you think we have with coal in the country?
Thank you very much. I think in terms of coal, if you look at the country structure, we still got enough coal for many years as well. So, but you are right in saying that from an environmental point of view, from a cleaner energy point of view, obviously you'll see that the investment on the coal front are starting to go down. You would have heard as well yesterday, the CEO did indicate that in our older stations on the generation side, we are looking at repurposing them. We have already issued a request for expression of interest to see how can we repurpose this coal power station so that we start now generating from a cleaner energy. So we are waiting for the industry now and the market to see how we can convert them, because we are aware that there's 4 of our power stations that within this next 10 years will be coming off from operations, but instead of just switching off the plug, because remember these power stations, they have communities. So for many years, there's a lot of communities, the mining houses that depends on them. So as part of this just transition towards the renewable future, we need to have that balance that we need to strike between where we are and where we're going. Hence, we now issued this looking at issues of how much solar can we put in the smaller coal stations, and how much gas can we also get. So the market will give us an indication of the appetite out there. But there is a huge appetite at the Eskom level from the board and also from the Exco to realize that the coal is going to start diminishing, and then we need to venture into some renewable type of energy. Thank you.
Right. So, Mr. Nxumalo, according to the information available to me, you've been with Eskom for about 2 decades now. During that time, there's been a fair amount of turbulence, twists and turns, so to speak. Do you get a sense that the utility is finally turning the bend insofar as it changes the way it operates? I mean, there's been a lot of criticism around how the utility has in the past been working, but obviously these type of interventions suggest that things might be looking different in the future. Are you convinced by that?
Absolutely. I think, that you rightfully say, having been with the company for so many years, I can see that now, because we understand what happened, why the fleet is performing the way it's performing, and we have articulated that to the public in terms of the limited investment and not pacing up with what the original equipment manufacturers have recommended how these fleets should be managed. So I'm quite happy to say that we have now put to this strategy which is supported by Expo and the board in terms of how do we renew this fleet, generation fleet. It's a big ship. It takes time to turn, but I'm quite confident now that we are moving in the right direction. So we must just continue to do the right thing, maintain the plan correctly, and then it will come up okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks very much for your time. We'll leave it there for now. Certainly appreciate it. Bheki Nxumalo is the head of generation at Eskom.